Do you think fame and the pressure of the spotlight can kill love? Share your thoughts below. For years, fans were left to speculate about the real reason for the breakup of the group, especially the breakdown of Benny Andersson and Frida's relationship. Was it the pressure of fame, personal conflicts, or a secret that has never been revealed? Finally, Benny broke his silence, and the truth he revealed left everyone stunned. Love turned sour. In the 1970s, when ABBA was at the top of the pop music charts, Benny Andersson and Frida Lyngstad seemed like the perfect couple. They rose to fame at the same time as their love story grew, just like Bjorn and Agnetha, who were co-workers. But behind all the glitter and popular songs, things weren't as great as they seemed. Difficulties were mounting, and eventually, they would have no choice but to part ways. Before ABBA's existence, Benny and Frida initially crossed paths in 1969. Frida was only starting to make her mark on Sweden's folk music scene when this happened. At a music event, Benny, who had already achieved fame with his band, the Hepstars, Sweden's answer to the Beatles, came upon her performance. His focus was immediately captured by her fiery red hair and powerful voice. Something about her piqued his curiosity. It was a lightning bolt. Finally, after what seems like an eternity of waiting, ABBA fans will get their night of waiting tonight. The band has reunited after a 35-year hiatus. There were more than just two musicians engaged. They were two trailblazers with a shared goal of monumental proportions. Frida expressed her belief that meeting Benny was the right thing to do in 1975 to a Swedish publication. No one else had ever grasped her love of music the way he did. What mattered to Benny was more than just her skill. Something special about Frida stood out. She felt liberated, and her desire was unrestrained. He had never worked with someone like her before. As ABBA was coming together, Benny and Frida's romance blossomed. While Bjorn and Agnetha were the center of attention as a couple, Benny and Frida were busy behind the scenes perfecting the music. Benny was gifted with musical composition, and Frida had a way of bringing pure emotion to every note she sang. They worked together to establish the sound that would later propel ABBA to fame. The cost of stardom, though, was high. The strain started to show its effects in the mid-1970s, when ABBA was just starting to gain fame. Benny would lock himself in the studio for hours, meticulously attending to every detail. Frida, who was more emotional and spontaneous, disagreed with his methodical approach to composing on occasion. Overall, Frida shows greater emotion. The differences that had brought them together as a great team began to drive a wedge between them as time passed. They had problems outside of the music industry as well. Just being famous became a problem. When he wasn't performing, Benny liked to keep a low profile, while Frida relished all the chances to mingle that came with her fame. Their friends started to see the rift between them, especially when ABBA was on tour. What had originally brought them together, their creative spark, became something they were beginning to lose as well. By 1979, the cracks in their relationship were too obvious to ignore any longer. Whenever Benny was in the studio, he would completely lose himself in his job. Meanwhile, rumors started circulating regarding his growing relationship with Mona Nurklet, a television employee he'd met during an ABBA special. The collapse. Eventually, it all came to a close in early 1981. Sometime after returning home, Benny confessed to Frida that he was feeling something for Mona. It was a letdown for Frida. She was deeply affected by the news. The level of grief was too great to overlook. No matter how hard they tried to keep up their professional demeanor for ABBA. Before their 9-year romance ended, they were still together. In an honest interview with Expressen, Benny shook his hands as he tried to explain what had gone wrong. Expressen interviewed him. His friends and family could see through his facade of friendliness to the pain he was hiding. Frida went through more than just the breakup of her romance. It seemed like everything they had made together, whether it was music or love, had betrayed them. It would have been foolish to ignore the effect that the split had on ABBA. They kept making music, but something was different now. The spark wasn't the same. Since the band's two defining couples were no longer together, their music started to mirror the pain they were feeling. For those in the know about what was going on behind the scenes, songs like "The Winner Takes It All" and "When All Is Said and Done" made a huge difference. Even while everyone was watching, as ABBA's golden marriage fell apart, few knew the pain that the band members were going through. Lars Johansson, an Expressen reporter, had no idea that he was about to uncover a story that would alter the perception of the band among fans when he walked into the office that May morning in 1981. A glimpse inside the Expressen interview. In a claustrophobic office at the Swedish Expressen newspaper on May 20th, 1981, Benny Andersson sat at a desk. A pack of smokes was the object of his nervous fiddling. The usual aura of confidence that he usually exuded was missing on this occasion. The strain of the past several weeks showed in every gesture he made, despite his trembling hands and fatigued eyes. Even though he had tried to evade the inevitable inquiries for weeks, he could do nothing now, as he sat awkwardly, ready for the long-awaited speech. The man who had once masterfully navigated stages now felt uneasy. To be honest, he said he didn't know how other people handled similar circumstances. His voice was barely audible, hovering above a whisper, and every word he said was burdened with doubt. Smoke curled about him as a tenuous defense mechanism against the disturbing truth he was now expressing aloud. The man who had composed some of ABBA's most iconic songs was at a loss for words when asked about his grief. No longer could he articulate how he felt. In the newsroom, enthusiasm was in the air. But this was no ordinary interview with a famous person. That was the first time the public had any real understanding of how ABBA's most famous duo ever fell apart. The press and fans have been speculating about it for weeks. But right then, Benny made his first public declaration. The gravity of a love story that had crumbled faster than anybody had imagined weighed on his words as he spoke. The reporter across the room paid close attention, but he was so absorbed in the action that he didn't notice his coffee was becoming cold. Benny attempted to play it off casually the moment Mona was mentioned, but his remarks did not mesh well with the ambiance. His attempt at a joke about her being his new woman was awkward and unnatural. As the gravity of his revelation hit home, the room fell into an unsettling silence. Everyone could see through his mask of calmness and understood the gravity of the situation. No matter how much he tried to hide it, a change in mood occurred when Benny brought up ABBA's potential future. For an instant, he let his guard down and talked honestly, letting the band's polished image go. He admitted that they had flaws and that being a celebrity has its difficulties. He made a joke about how he couldn't imagine himself performing with a beer belly at 45 years old. He seemed to be completely worn out. It was in the same week that Frida had her interview, and she maintained the same composed confidence throughout. She avoided dwelling on her sentiments of bitterness or guilt, and her speech was elegant as a result. Instead, she said that she had found comfort in a new relationship with a Swedish businessman, whose identity she wished to remain hidden, even if the breakup had been tough. A new person had brought her comfort, she added. Her remarks exhibited both strength and sensitivity simultaneously. It was love, not marriage, that she saw as an absolute need. That remained a major factor. Love, in whatever form it took, was still something to hold on to. Because of the Expressen article, ABBA experienced a turning point. Disrupting the carefully crafted image, it showed that even the biggest names in music had to cope with pain and issues. The band persisted in songwriting for an additional 15 months. Nevertheless, something was shifting. Their previously distinctive flair was now tinged with a melancholy that not even their upbeat songs could mask. An untold tale defined one of ABBA's shining lights and lay behind the band's meteoric rise to fame. How did a girl who was an outcast in her nation grow up to become a popular pop singer? A war child's journey to pop royalty. A sweet little girl was brought into this world in a quiet Norwegian town in the last months of 1945, right as the world was reveling in the end of World War II. Her given name was Annie Frid Lyngstad, but in the years that followed, everyone just called her Frida. There was a palpable air of dread surrounding her delivery, rather than pleasure and jubilation. Hers was not a normal child's position. Her parents, a German soldier and a Norwegian lady, gave birth to her during the war. War was in her blood. Even before she had the chance to take her first steps, her family's lineage deemed her an outcast in a nation still healing from the trauma of war. During the war, Frida's mother, Sinni Lyngstad, had an affair with German soldier Alfred Ha, who was stationed in Norway. At that moment, Frida had no idea who her father was. What started as a passionate romance soon became a heavy responsibility. There was an immediate need to restore the country when the war ended, and anyone associated with the enemy was subject to harsh punishment. Relationships between Norwegian women and German troops were met with open animosity, stigmatization, and social exclusion. Their innocent, undeserving children bore the brunt of their anger. Life in Norway after the war was far from easy for Frida and her mother. As a little girl, Frida was encouraged to believe that her father had died in battle. The story her family told her was a defense mechanism against the far more complicated truth. Her mother, Sinni, sought solace from the shame and pain she had experienced by making the tough decision to leave Norway. She and Frida eventually settled down in the little industrial town of Torskella after their adventure in Sweden. They were filled with hope for a better future ahead of them. Sinni was determined to create a good life for her daughter no matter what it took, sewing garments during the day and putting Frida to bed at night. She worked long hours as a seamstress in her efforts to provide a safe and loving environment for her kid. She spared no effort. Frida was more than just a music fanatic from a young age. It was a safe place, even though she often felt like an outsider in her social circle. Singing helped her find her place. At the tender age of 11, she was already making her festival debut on smaller stages, showcasing a voice that belied her youth. The town's residents may have taken notice, but her granny felt the greatest sense of accomplishment. Sinni worked long hours to support the family, but Frida's grandmother was the one who always supported her and helped her grow as a musician. With what little money she had, she bought Frida a record player and several albums that she treasured. With every spin of the record, Frida lost herself in the music and started daydreaming about a world beyond the peaceful town of Torskella. Frida explained that music was her way of escaping in a 1975 radio interview that took place in Sweden. She went on to say that when she sang, her worries faded into the background. Nobody ever inquired as to her background or her family tree. To me, the music was paramount. For a girl who had spent her whole life feeling like an outsider, those precious moments of acceptance that she experienced on stage were priceless. Given that the spotlight did not judge but rather illuminated, her story was able to surpass the one her circumstances dictated. At the age of 13, Frida wasn't only fantasizing about being a musician, she was actively pursuing her passion. The Annie Frid 4. Her band was founded during her early teenage years, and she performed anywhere she could find a chance. She began touring Sweden with a big band when she was 16 years old, performing jazz to packed dance halls. Not immediately after, she began to get attention from specialists in the industry. Her deep and soulful voice became instantly recognizable. She was able to break into the music industry on her own when EMI Records released her debut single in 1967. the first step towards something far bigger and more important than anything she had anticipated. A long-hidden fact about Frida's father was rediscovered in the early 1970s, when the band ABBA was only starting to form. A German magazine tracked down Alfred Haas and confirmed that he was alive and living in Germany, despite her being informed that he had died. Frida was faced with the possibility of crossing paths with him. While 1977 was the intended year for the reunion, it was far from the joyous celebration that one would hope for. There were a lot of unanswered questions, uncomfortable silences, and awkward looks. The meeting left Frida with unprocessed emotions that she was unable to cope with. Frida went on to say that their first meeting seemed like they were bumping into two strangers trying to make up after a 30-year separation. Although they made an effort to overcome the emotional divide, it was ultimately insurmountable. After a long and fruitless search, her long-lost father finally materialized before her eyes. The real-life story of ABBA singer Anne-Fried is like this. She goes on a quest to find her father, only to learn that her birth was orchestrated by the Nazis. Unfortunately, the bond she had been seeking did not materialize. Despite facing national rejection because of her origins, the young woman rose to become a worldwide superstar whose voice moved millions. Frida overcame much of her background, from being a child of war to becoming a cultural star. On the other hand, fame often throws a curveball. The topic persisted even after she exchanged her celebrity status for a real tiara. Would she be content if she finally discovered the joy she had sought for so long? Heavy as the crown is, it has. After Frida's marriage to Benny and the band ABBA got divorced, it seemed like she was finally prepared to live out her fairy tale. Marriage comes to life. Prince Heinrich Rousseau-Royce von Plauen was her husband at the time of their 1992 wedding. Her position was immediately changed to that of a princess. A hysteria gripped the Swedish press. As a member of the royal family, the beloved ABBA member lived in a majestic Swiss castle that overlooks the serene serenity of Lake Geneva, having captured the hearts of people everywhere as a pop sensation. It appeared like something out of a dream, and people all over the world couldn't stop raving about it. Unfortunately, not everyone's expectations of living at the palace were met. She had been a carefree woman who shone on stages in glittering jumpsuits before she became entangled in a web of strict royal protocol. It felt like she had entered a completely new universe when she was expected to adhere to traditions and norms that were centuries old in every public appearance and word she spoke. She went from enjoying a life of freedom as a pop singer to being constantly pressured to conform to norms that she found difficult to meet. Consequently, she started to question if this life as a princess was indeed her lifelong ambition. During an interview she gave to a Swiss journal in 1993, Frida remarked that the structure of aristocratic life was completely foreign to her. In contrast to her new life of complicated titles, elaborate dinners, and endless social obligations, the familiar stage lights seemed like a whole other planet to her. It seemed like another world was her new existence. Prince Heinrich's social group was drastically different from Frida's background. There was a complete lack of access to the recording studios and concert halls where she had previously thrived. On the contrary, diplomatic receptions, formal parties, and charity galas began to fill her days. Heinrich may have enjoyed high esteem among the royal family, but his expectations of his wife did not allow her the same degree of artistic freedom she had enjoyed when performing with ABBA. It was as if she had gone to another planet from the exciting energy she had felt when performing live, when she could let her emotions flow freely through song and movement. Frida, who had been free to follow her artistic dreams before, had to adjust to a more constrained position within the royal family, where she was unable to fully express herself. In 1998, Frida suffered a terrible loss although she was completely unprepared for it. The unimaginable loss of her daughter, Annalisa Lotta, in a car crash in New York City sent shockwaves through her entire being. Even though Anne was just 30 years old, she was more than just her child. At any measure, she was Frida's closest confidant. She was also the one who had been at Frida's side through thick and thin, someone who had lived through all the highs and lows of her extraordinary life. Having witnessed her mother's rise from war orphan to pop singer to princess, Anne knew what it was like to be a child of the war. The loss of their friend was particularly devastating because of the deep and unbreakable bond they had shared. No amount of fame or royal titles could ever satisfy the overwhelming sadness she felt after Frida's death. Nobody could have predicted how Anne's death would shock Frida. She decided she wanted to spend most of her time alone in her Swiss chalet, so she ceased being seen by the public. She used to live in a glittering, irrelevant world that appeared to engulf her in the past. Her existence as a pop singer and her attendance at royal functions were both encompassed in this. Even her royal duties, which had hitherto occupied her time, seemed little in comparison to the immense pain she bore. Benny Andersson, someone Frida never intended to lean on for comfort, ended up being a source of solace for her during this incredibly trying time. Benny tried to talk to her despite their complicated past and years of animosity. Being in the spotlight puts a certain strain on anyone, and he knew this since he and all of them had felt it. Because they had been in ABBA together, Frida felt a bond with them that she hadn't had in her royal life, even though it couldn't compare to the adulation and grandeur she had felt her whole life as a princess. It was precisely what she needed when she was alone. By the turn of the millennium, Frida had mostly faded from view. She had transformed into an unusual character in the world that had once adored her. The woman who had faced rejection during the war, triumphed in the music industry, and married into royalty, had found solace in her solitude. For the most part, she stayed in her peaceful Swiss retreat, avoiding the cameras and the expectations of the public, though she did make occasional appearances at ABBA-related events. Frida may have faded from public view, but ABBA's impact is as bright as ever. What if, for the first time in your life, you could be swept away by the magic of ABBA? A new era of music and technology. Throughout its existence, ABBA has embarked on experiences that can only be described as nothing short of extraordinary. Beginning with their spectacular rise to prominence in the 1970s, the band has left behind a considerable legacy, which encompasses having an enduring impact on music and popular culture. This heritage has been passed down from generation to generation. Their music has continued to resonate with listeners of all ages and ethnicities, even though they parted ways in 1982 when they went their ways. The year 2021, on the other hand, was the year that ABBA revealed that its legacy was an emphasis on looking ahead. For My Age was the title of ABBA's first new album in 40 years, which was released in the same year. Not only was it a highly big event in the world of music, but it was also quite significant among their admirers. A great deal of praise was expressed for the album, which evoked recollections of the timeless sound of the band ABBA. Nevertheless, it was not the song itself that made the comeback of ABBA stand out. Rather, it was how they shared it with the world. During their time in London, which they referred to as ABBA Voyage, they delivered a type of performance experience that was completely unfamiliar to the audience. Throughout their residency, their computer avatars, which are often referred to as avatars, performed alongside a real band. 7 years and a total of $175 million were required to create the technology that was accountable for it. These individuals made use of motion capture and special effects to give the impression that their avatars were younger versions of themselves. It is impossible to think of anything else that people have ever seen that is comparable to this concert. There is a lot of difficulty in accepting the fact that Benny, Bjorn, Agnetha, and Frida are not physically present in front of you because their avatars are such accurate representations of their actual features. An entire month was spent with each member of the band using motion capture suits to guarantee that their performances were as genuine as they could be. As a direct result of this, a groundbreaking presentation has been developed that, remarkably, links together the actual world and the digital world. Ever since it first opened its doors in May of 2022, the ABBA Voyage has been a sensation that is recognized all around the world and has sold more than 3 million tickets already. There are a significant number of fans who have traveled thousands of miles to be a part of this new chapter in the history of ABBA. These admirers come from over 140 different countries. A great number of individuals have experienced a roller coaster of emotions as a result of the performance, which has rekindled their connection to the magic of ABBA's renowned anthems and brought back memories of their youth. During the celebration of the first anniversary in 2023, the band made an unexpected appearance, which resulted in the generation of an unbelievable event. To create a moment that would be remembered for all time, they waved to the crowd while their avatars performed on stage. The event was hosted at a location that was particularly built and erected adjacent to Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in London. This was done to present the audience with the best delightful experience that was feasible. The music, which was enhanced by cutting-edge technology, but still maintained the unfiltered sense that comes from seeing a live performance, struck a chord with every person who saw it. Every component of the show, including the presence of a live band consisting of 10 members, outstanding visual effects, and a team comprising up to 200 persons, works together to create an experience that you will never forget. Aside from the fact that the avatars are capable of playing the traditional masterpieces, they also bring them to life in a manner that is not only intriguing but also very inventive. As a result of the fact that the atmosphere of the venue and the energy of the crowd both contribute to the construction of each performance, each one has its unique mood. Individuals of all ages, ranging from those who have been ABBA fans for their whole lives to younger generations who are only now becoming aware of their music, are getting together to commemorate the band's legacy in a manner that is radically different from what they have done in the past. Even though ABBA Voyage has been a huge success, the band has made it quite clear that they do not want to pursue traditional live performances shortly. Despite being offered $1 billion to go around the world, they chose not to accept the offer, even though their avatars will not be performing outside of the ABBA Voyage location. The experience that they provide continues to push the boundaries of live music innovatively. Anni-Frid Lyngstad's current life. Even though she is 78 years old, Anni-Frid Lyngstad, better known by her stage name Frida, continues to be regarded as a legendary figure in the field of music. As a result of the many highs and lows that have occurred during her life, she is presently enjoying the quiet years with the people she cares about, leading a simple life while yet retaining her impact in the hearts of her admirers. Frida continued her solo career for some time after the dissolution of ABBA in 1982, and then she gradually retired from the professional music industry. In the year 1992, she tied the knot with Prince Heinrich Rutzo Reuss von Plauen, therefore transforming herself into Princess Anni-Frid Reuss, hereditary Countess of Plauen. On the other hand, her spouse lost away from cancer in 1999, an event that left a significant vacuum in her life. After that, Frida decided to live a solitary life, avoiding the attention of the media and making only sporadic appearances in public. She is presently residing in Switzerland, more specifically in the Zermatt region, which is renowned for its breathtaking natural landscape and provides her with the opportunity to experience tranquility and relaxation. Even though she is no longer involved in the arts, Frida still keeps some links in the music industry and makes appearances at special events on occasion. In addition, she has been in a lasting relationship with Henry Smith, who is the 5th Viscount Hambledon of the United Kingdom, since the year 2007. Even though she is no longer performing on stage, Frida is still making significant contributions to charitable causes and environmental preservation initiatives. She is a staunch advocate for groups that work to preserve the natural world, particularly on initiatives that are concerned with the preservation of animals and climate change. In addition to that, she is involved in a wide variety of activities that assist mothers and children who are going through challenging times. The altruistic nature of her character and the devotion she has shown have enabled her to continue to have a good influence, even if she is not as much in the public spotlight as she was in the past. Although a significant amount of time has elapsed since the dissolution of ABBA, Frida has maintained communication with the band's former members. She was also involved in the development and recording process of the album Voyage, which was released by ABBA in 2021, when the band came back together. In acknowledgement of the significant contributions that Frida, Agnetha, Benny, and Bjorn have made to the music and culture of Sweden, the King of Sweden bestowed upon them the honor of knighthood in the year 2022. Even though she is not as active as she once was, Frida continues to be an essential component of ABBA in the hearts of its followers. She is proud of the legacy that the iconic group has left behind, and she holds the sweet memories of the group in the highest regard. Frida was no longer caught up in the swirl of celebrity when she decided to tone down her life in her 70s. She spends her time going for walks, reading, and appreciating the natural world. Even though she made infrequent appearances at special occasions, she managed to keep her life private and steer clear of the attention of the media. The latter years of Frida were no longer linked with the spotlight, yet her energy and voice will continue to live on in the hearts of those who were interested in her. Even though she preferred to live a peaceful life, she is still considered to be one of the most famous singers of the 20th century. Her contributions to the international music scene were made possible by the timeless songs that she sang with ABBA. What impact do you believe Benny and Frida's celebrity had on their interpersonal dynamics? As the question at the beginning of the video, how does Bjorn feel about how fame affects relationships? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.